Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, coming to you on this Thursday, June 12th. RIFC finally tastes defeat at Lynn Family Stadium in their midweek match, falling 2-1 in a game that was even worse in the stat columns than it was on the scoreboard. Did Khano make the necessary changes to steer this team towards a brighter future? Or are there some major potholes in store for fans this weekend against a very red-hot North Carolina FC at Centerville Bank Stadium? Joining me as always, the one and only co-host, Jason Carey. Jason, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I don't think RIFC is doing pretty good.
Not at all.
As long as I kind of put that in the back corner of my brain, don't think about it too much, everything else is going pretty good.
I mean, it's almost like you have to have one thing in your life not working well and the rest of it doing so well. So
got to bring balance to it.
Unfortunately, right now it's Khano Smith. He doesn't realize he's been trying to figure out what's going wrong with this team, and it's just that you're on cloud nine everywhere else, and so Khano has to be the one that suffers. That checks out mightily. Listen, this is not going to be a fun show. I feel like we said this on the Monday show. It was the scramble to get that one done because of the midweek, and we thought we were just doing a mailbag. We knew
I'm still going to have fun. It's maybe just not going to be as positive as it'll always be, You're
one of those types of people, huh? You like fun through other people's misery. Okay. I learn more about you every single day, my friend. But this show, I think we're taking the gloves off to a certain extent. I don't think people are going to hear what they want to hear in terms of our takes. We're not at those levels yet, but we're ever inching closer to those lines, as I think, the team is ever inching closer to getting removed from a playoff berth. And I think it's time to have a little bit of a more robust conversation about not only what's going wrong with this team, what's going wrong with the organization, and then also just rather than just complain, let's talk about what are the solutions, right? Let's figure out what's going on here on and off the pitch. So before we do all that, though, I want to start things off with just the news, because we don't stop talking about the news just because it's a sad and down day here at RAP Studios, but want to start things off. Antonio Nocerino gets the sack. The carpet is pulled after just 11 matches. He's now the fourth manager sacked this season in the USL Championship. He ended his time on a 3-3-6 record. Jason, I don't know if that number sounds familiar to you, but that may or may not be exactly where Rhode Island FC is currently in the table. The Las Vegas Lights, they had such an explosive first year with Dennis Sanchez under owner Jose Bautista. And now they're in ninth, looking on the outside, looking through the window, trying to get back into the playoff hunt. I want to ask first and foremost, why does this separation make sense for the Lights and not make sense for Rhode Island FC and Khano Smith?
So kind of different trajectories. It's only our second year. Las Vegas Lights have been around for a little bit. They kind of started to get something going together there at the end of the last season, right? We kind of beat them at the right time, right? Because they had a pretty strong second half of the season.
We were there, Memphis 901, in their locker room after that match.
And so the team was heading in the right directions. Things were starting to come in together. The organization was starting to look more like a serious, legitimate team and not just kind of a joke. From what I've read and understand, that he kind of was bringing the vibes down there and was kind of starting to shift them in the wrong direction. That even though there are teams worse off than them, they kind of were feeling like he was kind of poisoning the team a little bit too much there. It's sad to see him go, FIFA 12 Ultimate Team legend. But he is the fourth manager so far.
There could be more.
I'm not going to, I know there's already been some kind of, hullabaloo online about some people already calling for Khano. I'm not there yet. I think that we're not in a good spot. And if this continues, right, that could be some a legitimate, serious conversation that we would have. I think it has to get a lot worse, though. We struggled last year, but where we're currently at across all competitions, we're still doing pretty well in the Jägermeister Cup. The reality is we just went against a incredibly tough Louisville team, which we'll unpack a little bit here more. So I don't really want to entertain the idea of replacing him just yet. I don't think we're there. In regards to Nocerino, though, isn't Isn't the Italian manager position open, right? Like,
I think Claudio got offered. He's like, I just retired. Like, guys, leave me alone. I will say this, and I agree with you. I don't think that Khano's job in any way, shape, or form is in jeopardy. I think it's still super silly to ask that. I think it's a little disheartening when you see him frustrated because we haven't seen this level of failure yet from him. And they'll tell in any leadership course, right?
The team still has the buy-in from him,
Right.
Which I think is a different when we look in comparison to Las Vegas Lights with Nocerino. I don't know if they probably had some issue in the locker room based upon
Nocerino
some
suffered
of the
from
information that
success.
came out.
Nocerino also suffered from success in the fact that he was given a pass with the lack of resources from Miami. So everyone's like, you can't be this bad. So what happens if we give you a team who got to second place in the West? And it's mostly the same team with an improved goal scorer in Johnny Rodriguez. And then the tactics completely changed. And the squad was not it wasn't a reflection of what Las Vegas Lights was trying to be. They're fighting for every single fan to put a butt in seat, kind of like Rhode Island is in a sense from the home game perspective, as we are in our true new first year. But I think, what I want to ask you, because I think it's fair, is do you think that the seat's a little bit warmer for Coach Khano? Because I say it in this sense. We are continuing to always reflect and talk about how successful of a first season he has had as a head coach. But one of the best things about a leader is not when they are operating at their best, but like when things are not operating, where they want to be. What are the changes? What are the proactive and reactive things that we see a coach do to right that ship, right? Last season, we were struggling in form. I wouldn't say it was just the additional loanees and mid-season signings of like Haribo and Dugan and whatnot. Some of it was just the team needed that time. It's a little bit of a different circumstance here. So I'm still willing to give Khano the benefit of the doubt, but I want to ask you objectively, just thinking about it from the perspective that we're not as entrenched as we are, do you think that his seat's just 2 degrees warmer, not the hot seat, but just 2 degrees warmer?
I think maybe a tiny bit. I mean, I think we already saw last year with a president change that we kind of didn't see coming, didn't feel like the club was doing bad in any way, shape, or form. But there's clearly some metrics that behind the scenes that were being tracked. And I guess the team just felt that those were not being met. So I imagine in the same regards here, I don't know if they're calling anyone up, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have a contingency list of a few people who they might reach out to if they felt that things were to get to a point where they had to make that change, that maybe they wouldn't be like kind of caught in a position where they didn't have anyone lined up.
And I think that's spot on. I mean, we've heard from around the club now over the last few days that they are actively in the hunt for player acquisitions, whether that's MLS loanees, USL Championship loanees, or just potential purchases. Because remember, we're now kind of in the primary transfer window of the rest of the sport, right? Like when you remove yourself from just the North American equation. So there are a lot of leagues out there that could bring on a player of, respectable talent or consideration. We heard that maybe one of them was trialing last week. It doesn't sound like it panned out, or maybe it's still in the process, not quite yet sure. I haven't had a chance to talk with the club in any regard. But when I hear those things, what I'm hearing, instead of a front office or an ownership group distancing themselves from a head coach, I hear them actually saying, okay, we know what you're capable of. What's this thing you need? Like, be very specific about it. Be very concise with it. Let's go out and get you the tool you need, and we'll see what happens from there. Like, so I think there's still a lot of let's call it gravitas and credibility in the war chest. Maybe not as much money in the war chest, but I think that there's still a lot of favor for Khano. So I'm not terribly worried about Khano in any way, shape, or form. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is slightly. When you have the AC and you're like, okay, it's 70 degrees. What if we went to like 68 degrees? Maybe he's at 72 degrees. Maybe they drop some of the AC to save some energy money here. Want to talk about the next piece of news. This one's been coming out. It's been on the Discord. It's been all over the Reddit. And so I just want to kind of talk about it before one of the local news groups picks it up, or it gets ran out of proportions, because we don't quite know yet either. But there's been some discovery around the league from fans of other clubs that they've learned about the, let's call it, nuances of SeatGeek's seating policies within the ticketing app. As for those that are unfamiliar or have not gone to a game yet in person, SeatGeek is the exclusive ticketing distributor for all of the clubs in USL Championship. So they all use the same third-party app to manage all ticket inventory. So it's not just reseller tickets like, if you were to go on StubHub or insert whatever other one there is. And so with that, some fans of other clubs were quick to start realizing that as they tried to sell tickets for matches that they couldn't go to, and historically, if you're in the business of resale and it's an urgent thing where you're just trying to unload tickets to get some of your money back, sometimes you'll undercut the value. If a sports team isn't doing well and you know that the face value of your ticket price isn't going to maintain itself, you start lowering tickets cheaper. I mean, what the FIFA Club World Cup right now is, I heard, as low as $5 in some of these games because they're at like 1 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, so like people can't go to them.
I was trying to look at going to one of the matches, and I was looking at like just the cheapest tickets possible, and this was like a few weeks ago, and I think it was like $89. And
Which at the beginning they were like $500.
Like, I don't know if I can justify like nosebleed tickets for 89. Like I'd be cool with 40, $50. That feels reasonable. $80 starts to feel like, okay, I'm a little closer. Like I can make out the numbers on their jerseys.
Yeah, no, so anyways, so going back to the ticketing part with SeatGeek, some fans have been discovering around the league that they can't resell their tickets lower than their original purchase price. And so as people have started to try to coordinate and understand what exactly is going on with that, it's been discovered or realized by fans that certain teams have enabled or activated this programming where you're just not allowed to sell a ticket at a price reduced beyond either the seat value or potentially the lowest ticketed price in the venue. Not quite sure yet. I reached out to the club to try to get confirmation and get their take on everything so that before we reported on this, we wouldn't have to like only have half the information. But they did not respond to me today. And so as a result, all we know for sure right now is that, and we've confirmed that this is also something that's in effect with Rhode Island FC, that if you try to buy, you purchased a ticket, you're on the $16.36 plan, and maybe 7 hours prior, an emergency comes up, and you're like, well, I can't give the tickets away. I'll just put them up on resale, or you don't even want to give them away. You want to get a little bit of your value back. You try to sell them below that value, and the system will not allow you to list those tickets. So as a result, like, and so people are upset, frustratedly, and it's not specific to Rhode Island FC right now. It's across the league. But it's a thing that I think they're going to have to tackle, and maybe because it's just the nature of doing business. Like this is something that a lot of organizations across multiple sports do right now, and this is just we're making mountains out of molehills. But like I also understand why a sporting organization would want to do this, and I'm not doing this to like say nice things about Rhode Island FC. Think about it. Like if you want to increase the face value or demonstrate the business value of your sporting event, you don't want people going in and undermining it and saying like, if we've established that the base price to come and watch our product is $16, we don't want you to go in and sell a ticket for $7 or $8, right? We need to maintain the integrity of that. It's why like we always hear from the Pawsox that at the end, people wouldn't buy tickets. They just wait till day of, and they would just give tickets freely because they'd rather have people inside the stadium to purchase concessions and maybe make a few bucks that way. So I can understand them wanting to protect the value of their tickets.
But if this is specifically the resale market, right? And maybe I've never resold tickets on SeatGeek. I've only ever just bought them. Haven't that a ticket is essentially paid for, correct?
Correct.
So if they've already have the 1636 from someone, and that person said, I can't make it, and they're selling it for $10, isn't that $10 going to the person?
Right. So at
that point, they've already made their money. Someone would hopefully theoretically be coming into the stand, because this is not like every single ticket could be given up for a lesser value. You'd be looking at what a small percentage of tickets being sold under face value to get someone into the door to potentially spend money on a beer and popcorn when that never would have happened in the first place.
But you can look at it the other way and say, if we only keep the tickets at that same value, a curious party may just come in then and say, well, I want to buy a ticket. They're all this price. Like I can't find a better deal. So maybe I'm going to go buy, because remember this, and this is the complication of this being a third party reseller that is also your native ticketing agency. You don't know as the consumer if this is a ticket you're buying. I mean, you have the ability to filter, but like if you're just being lazy, you could end up buying a brand new ticket that Rhode Island FC has not sold at all, or
Oh,
by the
so you
reseller. So
don't.
by not allowing them to basically compete with Rhode Island FC increases its chances because, like you said, Rhode Island already sold the ticket, right? They don't care about that. So in essence, instead, what can happen is they can then get more value, they can get more dollars because they don't get as much on the sellout, if anything, because of the partnership with SeatGeek. I'm not really sure on third party how that works. There's a lot that we don't know here. But what
Yeah,
I
I
do
just
know is that it's a very interesting thing right now in a time with like the economy and like the spotlight of ticketing. Like this seems like a negative mark on the league as a whole, but specifically the clubs that are choosing to do this to kind of engage in this practice. And then the reason we're even talking about it is I've had multiple season ticket members come up to me both at the watch party and now in like DMs and in emails asking like, I don't understand, like these are my tickets, like I should be able to do anything I want with them. I have that right. I've said, without knowing more, you probably signed something, whether in your season ticket member purchase or just when you like buy the ticket, the contract you make with the club, that like you don't have that level of ownership over these tickets.
Unfortunately, it's like everything else where you don't own anything anymore.
Right. You got to read the EULA, right? Like that's how this works. So like I'm not gonna defend the club. I'm not gonna defend the end user. But like also when you think about all the other things that the club's trying to do to bring new people in, like the $4 and one ticket offerings, the limited amount of that. I saw an offer on Instagram a couple weeks ago of like buy a 5-game package, get a free jersey. Like I'm not of this person. Like I'm saying it because it's news to be said. I believe that like you buy your season tickets because one, you believe in the product, you believe in the organization, you want to support them, and that's it. And as long as you find at the time that's a reasonable, fair offer, I don't ever look back and say, oh, well, these other people that are just coming willy-nilly are getting better deals. That's not how I do it. But the other part of it I can also understand is like if you're not providing or projecting that value to your season ticket members, they may not renew the next season. So it's an interesting twist. I just saw like 2 minutes ago, like the club's trying to package the Major League Rugby final with like the next game on July 5th. So, I mean, like they're doing lots of different creative things, but I wonder how this will work, not just for Rhode Island FC, but also USL at large. Like if fans can't sell their tickets that they've purchased and they start to feel like it's not as good of a deal to be a season ticket member, like that could have a snowball effect if they don't monitor and manage. Hopefully the club or the league, as if this gets bigger, they'll have to probably respond to it, whether it's in-house or it's in league. But like it's just not a good feeling overall.
I just don't like the optics of empty stadiums. And the way I look at it is if you've already got your money and you can sell a ticket for a cheaper price to get someone in the door to make the crowds look bigger, potentially create a new fan. Like I want people to be in the stadium.
Agreed. And it's even harder right now with the bad performances on the pitch. It's probably making Rhode Island FC's job very difficult on the front office side of getting butts in seats. And the weather hasn't helped. Like we've had a perfect storm, figuratively and literally here. But let's get into this recap. Let's start talking about the game itself. It's an ugly game. It's probably one of the worst. But like you said at the beginning here, I think we have to kind of temper some of our expectations because it's that fallacy of what happens when a bad team or a team that's not in form runs into the best team in the league. I think some of the expectations that we can kind of set forth are pretty predictable, not entirely predictable. I definitely didn't have an own goal on my bingo card for last night's game, but I think some of this is going to be a little predictable. And if you ask anyone, Jason, I think everyone was kind of cautiously optimistic about this match. You joked last week that Lynn Family Stadium was our home away from home, which doesn't give us any credit in our current run of form at home. But when you give the fact that also Lou City is on top of an unbeaten streak going into this with the revenge arc in mind, and RIFC seems to be like just at its weakest point right now, you kind of thought like, okay, they're going to fight for their life just to get the draw, avoid the loss so that we can still say that you've never beaten us. But it doesn't go that way. We lose 2-1. Did it feel like a surprise? Did anything really catch you unawares? What was the overall feeling for you?
It's interesting because I kind of thought we were going to get thumped. And when we went down 1-0, it's like, okay, here we go. And I was kind of, settling myself in for a rough night. But then, not too far after that, we tied it up. And it felt like RAFC was playing decently well at times throughout the match, despite like not looking incredibly threatening. But I thought that maybe some of that magic might just creep back in. Maybe the Lou City guys would maybe the ones who were there last year, which is a lot of the same ones, might start having those kind of PTSD nightmares where they're back in the trenches, trying to defend an onslaught from the RIFC attack. And I was like, hey, anything can happen at this point. Ultimately didn't pan out the way we wanted to.
Technically anything did happen with that own goal.
Yeah.
And the PTSD was probably very real for Kyle Adams at that point, having scored for the second time only at Lynn Family Stadium this year, and it was an own goal.
The thing that makes it worse is just if you step back and take a look at the overall actual form. That's where it makes it look worse. If this is a one-off game against an undefeated Lou City who is running away right now with the league, and I mean, who knows, maybe they're going to go for an Invincibles run, you say, fair enough, right? Like, we went up against the best of the best, where we just didn't do it this time. But when you extrapolate, look at how we're doing overall this season, it starts to feel a bit more tough to swallow in the regards of what is our current trajectory at this point.
Agreed. And going back, I think going back to that own goal again, it almost gave me hope, right? Because when they went up first, I was like, okay, we know the song and dance that happens when we go down first. We're very familiar with that story. But then we get the own goal, right? And it's like, okay, let's breathe a little life into this team right now. Let's see if maybe we can hold on. Maybe we've rattled them, right? Maybe
we can sign own goal to a contract. Or he's the striker we need.
I put that image up in the Discord earlier. Fun fact. I gave him the number 2 because we have now benefited from 2 own goals this season. And guess what? The player own goal is also tied at the top of the leaderboard for goals scored for Rhode Island FC. So it's own goal and then Clay Holstead. And that's our best 2 strikers in the regular season so far. That are actively playing. So hey, every week, we'll just sign an own goal player, and that's the thing that Brett Johnson and Mike Parkhurst are out looking for. They're looking for an own goal player. Someone asked if we would want Mark Doyle back, and I jokingly said, well, he only scored 4 goals and an own goal. Looking at that now, maybe he could have gotten a second own goal for the night. Who knows? Anything could have been possible. But you joke, and I think you had just really well said, it's a very accurate snapshot of the team's performance. I guess I want to ask you, we need to address, is it time to panic? Because there's going to be a lot of stats that we're going to throw out tonight. We've gone back and forth over the last 24 hours about the confusion, about are we on the decline? It seems like we're getting worse comparatively, granted playing a much more difficult opponent, but it doesn't seem like we have any answers. And between Khano's press last week, these 2 last results, now going in against a very good North Carolina side right now, haven't won a game at home. Like, I don't want to say, is it time to panic? But should we start to be getting angrier in the sense that we may be in for a very bad run of form for a while to come?
I'm not much of a panicker myself. I would say though that I'm definitely tempering my expectations. Every match.
You're not mad, you're just disappointed. Is that's
yeah.
I know that's saying.
Yeah. That's definitely a more accurate description of me in the regards to we had some dreams of grandeur earlier on. We're like, 4th place, maybe somewhere even 3rd place or something. I never realistically thought we would topple one of the giants of Louisville or Charleston, but maybe we could go toe to toe with them considering some of the results that we've had against those teams. But at this point, I'm 7th, 8th. Is that, it's
just
going
single digits.
It's going to take a drastic change for us. I still think that this team is stacked enough and has the talent to make it into the playoffs. I just don't know if it's going to be in time enough to get to a home playoff position.
Well, then, perfect segue. Let's talk about how Coach Khano set up this team and all of that stacked talent that you just talked about.
Yeah, so Jackson Lee here in net. We've got a back 3, maybe back 5. Rio Hope Gun, Karifa Yao, and Grant Stoneman, with some wingbacks there of Frank Nodarce and Aldair Sanchez. In that midfield, we have Clay Holstead, Amos Shapiro Thompson, Zach Caravo, Joe Brito kind of playing like a second striker, kind of behind Chico up top. So somewhat like maybe a 3-5-2 or a 3-5-1-1, if you will, but slight change from like our 4-2-3-1 that we've kind of been playing. Like it's a minor.
I think it's a big change. I don't think it's a minor change because it's not just the formation; it was also the players, right? So, like, if we talk about that in conjunction, and maybe you disagree, we can have this little dialogue here on. This is why we do the podcast, but I look at it as let's go through the positives. It's good to see a back three just for the experimentation. Whether the rest of it was unchanged or not, we can talk about. But we did see that. We saw Krifa Yao get a return against a very tough. Like, you talk about getting hot dropped into a game after you've been trying to like figure your way back in when it's not due to injury, and it's like, oh hey, we're gonna need you to show up big, and it's against Louisville at Lynn Family, right? Something he's done in the past. I think the real thing that I want to ask you though is the curiosity comes of, we asked, like, Khano said, quality is lacking, change is needed. He changes the formation, and Fuson and Rodriguez both go to the bench. This is either that lack of quality being basically put in a spotlight, or this is 40 level, we need to save the minutes for the game against North Carolina.
We're going to lose anyway.
Maybe, but I guess I want to ask, is this the coach telling us where he sees the problems? Because Chico's still on the pitch. I didn't have Chico on this pitch. I'm not going to lie to you. Whether it was because he's our only forward currently right now or not, I thought the change was going to be, I thought Fuson made sense, and I thought that Chico also made sense, but not seeing Rodriguez, is this a declaration of intent? Is this a statement from Khano?
I think it is definitely a statement in regards to some players' form, but maybe he's not happy with the way some of them have performed. For instance, here, like you said, Noah Fuson and Maxi Rodriguez, two players we kind of expect to maybe do a little more for us. I would potentially give Maxi Rodriguez a bit of a pass, as this is his first year with this team. So there's still that kind of integration period that, for all intents and purposes, that he's going through. And then maybe we also hyped him up to be somewhat of a player that maybe he really isn't. Maybe some of those numbers that he achieved last season were a bit inflated in the way that that team played, because his stats are, not awful. He's put in some good shifts for us. We're just not getting the maybe goal and assist production, I think, from him that we were kind of expecting. But Joe Brito has been one of the few players I think that we could actually look at and say, you know what, like, I don't think you can fault him too much here, right? He's had a good season, along with probably like Clay Holstead and Aime Mabika. Outside of that, I look at this team and like, I don't find a lot of positives. There's definitely some one-off performances from some of these players.
I would say Amos.
Amos as well too. Yeah, because he was one of those ones that we didn't even expect that, right? Like we kind of expected him to still be a fringe player, especially with all the midfield additions that we brought in. So
it's funny you say that, to cut you off. It's interesting because I've been trying to figure out what is wrong with Noah Fuson. We've addressed it a couple times. There's been so much attention on Chico and his lack of scoring that, I've been looking at what's the supporting cast doing? What is the rest of the group? And, Fuson, Quizera, also, they both have had a tremendous drop off in production this year as well. But what's really interesting with Noah is I went back to the interview, and I encourage new listeners, if they never did, or even old listeners, go back and listen to Khano's recap that we did in the interview back in December after the end of the season. And the thing that he told me was the biggest surprise that he hadn't planned on for the season was actually the production of Noah Fuson. When he had started the season, Khano had mentioned that Noah was looked at as a supporting cast member, right? He was going to be a 25, 35-minute winger, or someone to harass the front line. He has the speed, he has the legs, and just go after it. But he so quickly rose above what the Y-Scout predictions were, what their own analytics were, that he worked his way into a starting spot. And he went on to say, like, that was the best surprise of the season. I'm wondering now if that maybe, because we've seen this from players, when they're in form or when they overperform. I'm wondering for Noah Fuson, is this a case of, did he just have the best year of his life last season and this is a return to his averages, right? Is the pendulum swinging back now? And this is the player he's always been. Noah is one of my favorite human beings in the entire world, and I don't like having to say that, but the question becomes, if you're not getting in your head, did you have the league kind of caught so unaware and so surprised that there was this, like that's why you had such a breakout year? And has this always been the player you are? I don't have those questions yet. I can tell you that in his substitution yesterday, he was one of the least impactful subs on the game. I think he only had like 13 touches, no shots. He only had 3 passes. Like, he was basically brought on and then just became invisible. Maxey was not much better in his substitution, whereas you look at like a player like Anking, he made a bigger difference in the minutes that he had, which were farther and fewer between. So I don't quite know what's going on with them, but I'm starting to kind of lean towards what Khano was doing, is if those are the 2 players that we have to bench, performance didn't necessarily do any better, but also like we didn't do any worse. We scored a goal. Granted, we didn't score it, but a goal was scored on our behalf. So I don't know. Like, there's a problem with that. There's a big problem with the fact that some of our biggest players are not stepping into their big roles this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we saw like a player like Joe Brito start here. I think that he has shown that he will go out there and fight and work hard. He, has consistently performed well when called upon so far this season.
Yeah, so I want to talk minus the XG. I don't know how you feel about the overall numbers. Like I said at the beginning, the stats kind of were even worse than the score line itself. The big ones that come out to me, just 4 shots in this match, 2 on target, but just 4 shots. It's our lowest shots on record this season. It's our 5th lowest XG of all time. Like, that's just not good. And I know that Louisville was the better team on the night, but when you have 57% of the possession and you can only sequence together for 4 shots, that's a big problem. The other 2 that were noticeably completely disproportionate for me, the crosses and the dribbles. Their crosses were 23 to our, I think, 5, and their dribbles were like 14 to our, I think it was like 3. I can't see on the screen right now because it's too tiny for me, but like, they were more direct. They were willing to throw it into the mixer way more often, and they were willing to take on players. We talked at length about Quazera, and like, without him on the pitch, especially on the right side, he doesn't seem to be dribbling or trying to take on players. When Lou was engaged in their high press, we couldn't work the ball into the middle third. Like, they were fine with us and causing a turnover, or they were fine once they went up. They backed off and waited until we engaged the wingers, and then they'd re-engage the press quickly. We could not connect the 2 halves of this team together. So when we were trying to connect them, it didn't happen. And when we did, we kind of left players out on islands for the majority of the night. But overall, this team seems like it got worse from Miami. And Khano said he needed to make the changes. We talked about the formation. So to go back to what you said, how these were maybe minor changes or minor differences in performance overall. Why does this game feel so much worse, even though it was against a better team?
At times, it still kind of looked like a 4-5-1 and not because there were times when one of the wing backs would kind of tuck in, and then those 2 positions, 4-5-1 and 4-2-3-1, are actually kind of very similar. Just kind of depends where you just drag players a little bit, little spots here and there. I mean, I was kind of hoping for a straight up 3-5-2, and it doesn't feel like we've really gone back to that. And maybe part of the problem is that we just aren't playing with that 2 striker system. I know that he's not exactly a striker, but often when we didn't have everyone healthy, we would throw Noah up there on top with someone like Chico at times, or with JJ.
There was a period when we had Noah and Mark Doyle as our 2 striker system at the top.
Yeah,
just reflect on that. It's like,
and then what we did in terms of those 3 midfielders, instead of like a 10 there, remember there was a really successful period of time where it was Clay, Mark, and Zach. And they did that rotation where they would take turns pressing forward, but it was such a strong midfield there that they would kind of be able to press back the opponents, win the ball, continue to create opportunities. And that's when we saw this team be really strong. And at this point, there's definitely been some change in tactics. And so far, I don't feel like it's been consistent enough to work. So why not run it back? Try what worked last
Well,
year.
Mark's not been available like all season.
Yeah.
Which is weird, by the way, that
But
like
then
for the
also-
guy that we thought was not going to be, like we thought he was going to be the fringe substitute. It's also weird that he's got this knock and like he showed up for a minute and now he's back on the knock again. Like it's almost like the curse is alive again. Like Mark's like, oh look, I'm just making the joke. I'm not saying this like, oh, I wasn't gonna get minutes. Oh, I'm not feeling good today. You know, like I'm sick. You're gonna have to take a day off or a month off.
I don't know. I mean, that there's some things that we could play around with. Maybe without Mark, maybe you try, with the rise of AST, you do AST, Clay, and Zach there in that trio.
Sure, but they're not rotating that triangle. They're still doing the maxi version of that system.
Put Maxi
where like
up
one
front,
goes a little bit further
Chico
up,
or something.
and there's like a
tell him
double pivot.
He's a striker now. I don't know.
We need to do that. We'll talk about that more length. All right, moving into it. I mean, everyone that watched the game, you obviously all know. 20th minute, Aiden McFadden scores off of a close range header. Not great, but it was. We didn't close down on it. Something we're known for. The ball goes from one side of the pitch to the other, and we're kind of discombobulated at the time. It's not a pretty one. Everyone's already seen the Joe Brito highlight of the pass to Kyle Adams, who buries it for Rhode Island FC.
It's too bad that Aldair doesn't get an assist on there
because of the own goal.
It's an own goal,
yeah.
But it is what it is.
And then Ray Serrano decides, to bury it and get Louisville's revenge for last year's playoff bow out, and scores one in the 64th minute. And that goal was freakish because it comes off the back of a defensive rotation and substitution. I heard at the watch party, people were quick to blame Ime Mabika because he stepped through. The ball is deflected out, so it should just go somewhere, but it doesn't. It goes right to the feet of another player in Louisville who's not really expecting it, but is able to pass it on. Mabika was already stepping out to close that run down. The ball goes the other direction, and like even with his wingspan, he tries to put a foot on it, but like he can't do anything. Rio Hope Gunn's behind, and so he can't catch it. I'm not really upset about the defensive piece on that. I think you're going to talk about how sometimes goals can just be goals, but I was surprised that Mabika didn't play in the center of the center back formation. It was weird to see when Grant was in the left center back role. He just kind of tucked into the central part, maybe because he was the captain, maybe because he has the most experience with this team. But I would have thought you would have planted Ime in for a like swap with Karifa. And I don't know if that messed anything up in the moment as they were transitioning through, but that did suck. Was this goal a defensive giveaway?
I mean, also Ime just came in. He was getting up to speed against some very fast like wingers / forwards there. So I wouldn't want to be too harsh on him, and like you kind of spoiled there. Like there are times when goals just happen, and when you look at other stats like 4 shots from Rhode Island, the lowest in a single match in the USL Championship this season, like we did absolutely nothing up front to give ourselves any favors or any opportunities to win that game. Like to say that we would go out there, because there are times when you watch a game and you say a draw is a fair result. Both teams played well, but neither was better than the other. There's no way I would say that RIFC were the better team. And if we were to get a draw, it would be like a stolen point, which I would be absolutely happy with. And any team who goes in there maybe underperforms and gets away with one, say, hey, I'll take this point. But if you try and be objective there and say, well, the other team clearly outplayed you, maybe they forgot their shooting boots and just didn't go their way that day.
I got a little worried at the end of the first half. I pulled up the stats on my phone. We had no shots. No shots. Jason, not shots on target. No shots.
Sporting Kansas City against Galaxy earlier.
So that's why I got scared of it, because I was like, oh man, we have a goal, but we have no shots now in the first half. This is not good. And then ironically, when you look at it too, I had made a joke because Chico had fired something off and he skied it. It shanked it way right. And I just made the joke and said, hey, he's calibrating. He's just lining up. Didn't realize that may have been his best look on the night, because he did not register a single shot in the game. Chico's interesting right now. I know a lot of people again want to continue to harp on him, but his defensive stats, his dual stats, are some of the best in the team, like better than our defenders. he's putting in work and a level of physicality that you can't really respect it because you're looking for
pass
goals.
He made when he was on the right wing, back into the center of the box, where was it Zach who just kind of he fell over or whatever?
Yeah, and then
that was a pass from Chico. It's Chico sometimes is almost better as a winger. Weirdly enough, when he gets into those positions behind the line, some of those passes he can make into the box are really good. The problem is, as the only striker, there's no one else there to score it.
Yeah,
I mean, if he could clone himself, he could.
I don't think they allow 12 people on the pitch just because one of them is your clone. I will also say that, with that though, Chico's positioning seems to be weird lately. Like he's making the wrong direction run as the momentum's carrying towards goal. Like even on the Brito one, if you go back and watch it, like the ball is going along, right? And both Brito is on the far right, Chico's on the far left. They're both running at it. Brito's off camera, so you can't see, but he cuts, right? So he cuts into Chico's side and gets the ball. Chico, rather than like go right and try to go to the outside post or like the far corner to open up and see if he can collect any kind of cross, he still stays central, tucked into that inner post. He never gets there. Like he never breaks towards goal. He's either not fast enough or he didn't get a step up. Brito takes that all the way to the line and then fires it in. But like go back and watch Chico's positioning on that. He doesn't try to be a little bit more dangerous in the channel, right? He just like it's almost like he's like, oh, Brito's not going to catch that ball. Oh, Brito caught that ball. Oh, he can't get. Oh, Brito did that. Okay, thanks, Kyle Adams. Thanks for the goal. It's difficult to watch, but I do want to say the first thing, just kind of going through the rundown here. We got to start going quicker because we're way behind. The Nadarsa yellow at the very beginning. I am not going to talk about Alton Garcia tonight because so many people were like, we love this ref, and like that backfired really badly at the end. I will say Alton Garcia, though, fun fact, the last time he reffed a Rhode Island FC game, it was at Lynn Family Stadium for the playoffs. So the last time he saw us was in the exact same place. So you guys can go back and compare notes if you want on how good he was there, because I'm pretty sure everyone liked him in that playoff run. But I want to ask that head-to-head contact, Kevin Lambert, he comes out, Evan Davila has to come on. It's just going for the ball. It's like the 4th minute of the game. Make that yellow card make sense to me. It's the second time now in as many games where we've gotten a yellow in the first 5-6 minutes of a match, and especially when it's a defender, that can kind of change. I know he played right wing back in this game, but like that can change the dimension of the game. Did that yellow card make sense, or did that kind of just set us up for some false hope and problems later?
I admittedly didn't go back and watch it. I think from initial view, I thought it was a bit harsh. With the way our luck has been going, it was just kind of like, yeah, of course we get a yellow for that. That's kind of how I felt about that. Like you said, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the ref. I think there are some decisions that I wasn't a fan of, but I also don't feel like this game was close enough for us to really sit here and complain about it, because at the end of the day, it wouldn't have mattered, because RIFC were not in this game.
So then let's stay on the ref tribe for a couple seconds here. Then penalty or penalties or not in the dust up kind of towards the end of the game. First one is Jojea Kozera.
It looked like a
passes
push
the ball back
from
in
the back of Jojea. He makes connection to the ball. Then on the Damian Loss comes through. I forget who was trying to collect the ball there. He kind of comes through his legs to win the ball there. I feel like there's possibly a penalty there. Obviously, we wouldn't have scored it. So like it
and that is the fun part, right? Like everyone's like, oh, penalty. It's like, go back on our track record, everyone.
Yeah,
our best penalty takers are JJ Williams, and we haven't seen Maxi yet take a penalty, but he may be our best.
Yeah, so we don't know. We probably, honestly, with our luck, we probably would have missed it and maybe not deserved it. That being said, like things like deserving don't matter in soccer. If it was the right call, it should have been called. I don't want to sit here and lose any sleep over it. I'd say I would think that a penalty out of one of those challenges is fair, but kind of is what it is. Like I said, I'm of the belief that this team is not a good penalty team. So unless JJ was out there, I'd say, okay, yeah, like give us that opportunity.
Right. And I mean, I think that looking back on the replay, I think that the Damian Loss one with Rodriguez is a little less. I think that he gets there first, and Rodriguez just kind of drags through it, so it looks like it. You could argue Quezera being pushed off. I mean, I think that when you have to play the ball, and if you unless you're trying to body a player and block the ball, but Quezera had already touched it, so at that point, then
yeah, I think that defender and we've also talked about this a few times too. Sometimes we don't
we've been
see
flopping a lot
Quezera's
lately.
well, we also don't see Quezera's speed though too, and I think that was one of those moments where it surprised us that no, he actually got to that ball and
Did
was
you pay
able to get
attention
a
to what
touch.
side he was on?
He was the left, yeah, and
He just has a magic touch on that left side.
I mean, he's left-footed, so
I know. I'm just saying, like we talk about his dribbling and like
put him
why
back
our
on the
team
left.
that may be one of the changes. Listen, and my ending point on that is also though, if you were relying on penalties, like let's be honest, like penalties are rewarded because you're breaking down defenses and you're maybe not finding
getting
the net,
into challenging positions to the point where maybe you have better numbers on them and they are just making rash challenges because they're afraid of giving up a goal.
Yeah, there were 80 other minutes in that game that you did nothing, maybe even more. So I'm over it. But I do want to talk about the other ref decision. Penalty, second yellow card, red card to Jojea Quezera. I put it up there today. It kind of went both ways. Some people like really looked into the context of it versus some people just looked at the direct immediacy of the foul. I'm going to say, and instead of asking, I'm just going to say my take first. I believe that if you look at it just at the limitations of it being a foul and calling it, that was not a foul. There was not enough contact. What was it? Manny Perez just sells it. Like he just does a Superman dive over Quezera. And I don't believe that was a foul. But when you look back at the game, the Elton Garcia had already had a very strong conversation with Jojea on his second foul of the game, where he was already on a yellow card, and he warned him that this was it. Like you could tell through the body language, through the hand counting, like you were not going to get another moment in this game. And Jojea probably should have known better, knowing that this ref had already given him a warning. Lou City obviously knew that as well, so he fell right into the trap. And so, was it a foul? No. But at that point, like your fate had already been sealed, and you should have probably never ran head on into a confrontation like that. The only other thing I would argue is I went back and looked at his first yellow card. The dude was only on for 25 minutes. He had 3 fouls. The first one was yellow card-esque, but like I also think Garcia could have given him a pass.
Either way, of how far it was back into
sure.
our own half, I think that's one where you could probably just say, like, you do anything else again, you're getting a yellow card kind of thing.
Right, because it was also too, like, those fouls usually happen when you're the offensive team and a tactical attack has broken down. Quezera had already taken the ball from McFadden and was off to the races. Like, he'd already beaten McFadden, and he could have just gone. He didn't have to touch it. He just didn't have to touch him. And he's like, no, I'm going to just throw you to the ground. And so it was technically an advantage that wasn't going to exist if Quezera just not touched him. So, like, in that sense, like, you're already getting the ball in a dangerous position. You don't need the yellow card since it's your first offense. Like, I don't know. That's how I feel about the game, but it's not also an impossible yellow to be given.
I think moral of the story here is that Quezera needed to be smarter here.
I thought you were going to say keep your hands to yourself.
No, I maybe don't, like, we could pick apart these calls. I think the reality is here, though, that, Quezera being on a yellow should have been smarter. What I would have liked to see that if a player goes into a challenge and let's say the challenge itself is potentially like not great, you give them the yellow. But at the same time, if the other player like really dives theatrically and sells it, give the guy a yellow for diving. Why can't it be both? So you know what, Quezera, you were reckless right there. Maybe you could have hurt someone with a challenge. You're already on a yellow. I've warned you. Here's your second yellow. You're going. I saw you dive over him like there was no contact. You clearly are selling this foul to try and get him in trouble as opposed to just getting out of the, like, you know what I mean? Or
take the hit.
Take the hit, continue, get out of the way, do anything else but try and get a perfect 10.
I'd love to know if the disco finds players.
There's a
afterwards.
balance where you have momentum, you're trying not to hurt your legs, but at the same time, we've seen players who will go through challenges, that they'll get out of the way, and they won't roll around the floor and act like they died. They be a professional. They do it in an honorable way. If you are trying to sell me something to a ref to get someone in trouble, I think players like that should be yellow carded for diving.
I just want to know if there's even like a fine on the back end. Like, does the disciplinary committee?
No, they don't. They won't do anything.
Why not? Like, maybe
USL.
that's the answer.
I mean, and that's what we could argue for, but things like that just don't happen.
Because technically, then Elton Garcia, by our definitions, he got the call wrong, but there will be no punishment. So, like, Elton has to do a better job. He needs to get that call right. Manny Perez needs to be, slapped on the wrist. Like, we're already losing one of our better players for an entire game now for it. And granted, all of it is entirely Jose Quizera's fault. So it's a difficult situation to be in. We're running late on time, so we're going to have to jump right to the main one here. And that's the problem with possession here. I want to ask this final question as I throw something up on the screen for people watching along. Jason, I have up on the screen the XG. Like I said earlier, this is now the 5th worst XG performance that we've had in the entire club's history. These are all of the games that we've ever played. The worst one being that Pittsburgh Riverhound match last season, all the way out to Miami goals galore for the fan appreciation game last year. The one that this falls under is highlighted in red on the screen at that point. I had my stats here. Here we go. At 0.32. The ones before it that were worse were 0.06, 0.28 against the Colo Spigs in the final, 0.29 against North Carolina FC. I think that's a team we're going to talk about here in a minute. And then 0.29 again against Detroit City. That game came off of a red card, so we kind of know how that one fell apart. The rest of the games that have happened this season are highlighted in yellow. And as you can see here on the graph, a majority of our games are putting us lower and lower into XG, purgatory. Our better games last year came from a transition style of play with the 3-5-2. We're now here locked in this 4-2-3-1 with a possession emphasis. I want to ask you, you talked last week that we needed to be faster, we needed to be quicker, but there's got to be more to this, right? Like, there's got to be more problems that we can solve than that. I ran through every possession number I could get my hands on today, and you've got the numbers up too. We've kind of been going through it. Everything tells me that this possession system is only slightly deviating by 10% or less in a majority of performance statistics. The only ones where it's greater at like 20 to 30 are the longer periods of time that we hold on to the ball, or the less frequency of when we lose the ball because we're holding on to the ball longer. We this year are better at our final third entries. We're this year better at passes and possession in the final third. We're this year, we're more better at fast breaks somehow. It doesn't feel like it. The only place, Jason, that we are way off the rails right now is just in conversion, shot conversion into goals. We're 50% worse this year than we were last season at this time. So then, do we need to talk and say it's not tactics? Like Khano said in the press, like, we're doing everything that matters. We're just missing quality. Does this really come down to finishing? And then if it's finishing, and what is it, luck? Do we need another player? Like, at this point, do we actually need to change the tactics after we've ran through these possession numbers? Is the possession system, I know it's slower, it's a little bit more boring with the quality of players we have. This isn't Prem League, but like, what do we do? You're now the coach. Khano has been sacked. Coach Jason Carey, along with his assistant manager, Sean Carey. The Carey's are now running this club. What do you do?
I mean, with it, I wasn't surprised when you told me all that stuff, and when you kind of did a lot of that research here today, that the only thing that really is suffering right now is conversion. And I mean, at that point, well, I would maybe dig a little deeper from there and figure out specifically, is it just like, is Chico not scoring? Is it just our strikers that's a problem?
It's all of them.
But then also, we know that all of them last year scored because we had 15, 16 different goal scorers last year. We were, if not the highest leading team in regards to
different scores,
unique scores. We were up there. I mean, do they just need to have every practice sessions? Like, we're only scoring goals. Like, I don't know. Do we need just one talismanic striker to kind of score these chances to give everyone else the confidence that no, this team can score? Does everyone see each other miss a chance and think, oh man, we're out of luck right now, our form's bad, and it kind of just spreads throughout the entire team, like the mentality, and they're kind of all down on themselves in regards to scoring. It's hard to say how an entire team can be unlucky in that regards.
I mean, when you look at it from a goal scoring perspective, the only game this year where we've scored multiple goals, there's only been one, that came where we didn't have a 2-striker system. Every other game, whether it was Open Cup, Jägermeister Cup, regular season, they've all been 2-striker systems with Chico and or JJ Williams. I don't know if I told this on last week's pod or if I just told people randomly at the watch party, but JJ Williams and Chico have only linked up on 4 goal contributions in the same game in the entirety of all of their minutes they've played. And I don't even remember how many of those were like connections to each other. This is just where one of them or one of them on each side either got a goal or an assist, and that's it. So like, I don't know what it is, but only the Tampa Bay game where we were shooting from outside the box this season is the only time we've stacked multiple goals. I think it's a 2-striker system. I think that that's what's missing, and I think we just need to put 2 bodies up front. We'll talk about our formation tactic here in a second, but I think that's the ultimate problem. But for those that have been saying possession's the broken thing here, possession is working for this team. I have all the data. I'm happy to share it. Everything's fine. We're only slightly off by 10%.
So what you're saying is we're panicking for no reason. We just need to buy a striker. We're good.
I think the quality, like Khano said, I think the players that we have on this team need to be able to smell a goal and score it. Like that's the major problem right now. And I don't know, if it's a curse at this point. I don't know if it's mental. I don't know if it's just like you said, they have to go out there and shoot 1,000 times, but something is broken in this team. And the broken part is the conversion rate. That is what's broken on this squad at the moment. So
Need some holy water to remove the curse.
Yeah, let's do some soccer baptizing. I'm fine. We got to do the shoe body bop. That's what we need. We need to bring it back. Let's get into these standings and start breaking down the North Carolina match.
Yeah, so RIFC remain in 8th place here with a 3-3-6 record with 12 points. Now on a -2 goal differential. Yikes. And they're now just 1 loss shy of our total amount of losses in all of last year's championship season. You'll love to see it, JK.
So we'll just never lose another game this year. Perfect.
This is the first time RIFC has lost 3 consecutive league matches in a row in their history. We've only ever lost 2, and then we would respond with a draw or a win or something there. Khano said last year that good teams don't lose 2 games in a row. I know he hates us for bringing that up. Maybe we're not a
His
good
words.
we're not a good team right now. Which wasn't something we saw from this group until back-to-back losses late in the season against, Orange County and Pittsburgh. It's a time where we blamed maybe it had something to do with kind of being on the road, the desperateness of those teams fighting to make it into the playoffs, right? Orange County eventually did kind of make that late season push. And Pittsburgh, similar, they kind of turned around some of their fortune there. But 3 losses now in Centerville Bank Stadium, it's kind of rough.
Yeah, and on top of that, not only do we have the 3 losses, but we also don't have 3 goals, or we don't have 3 games with goals now. If we don't count the own goal, we've never had that stat either. So it's weird when you don't score how you don't also win games. Who would have thought there?
I didn't know that's how this game worked.
On the North Carolina side of things, North Carolina snuck into the playoffs kind of quietly last season. A lot of people forget that going into the USL Championship playoffs, getting knocked out by Lou City in the first round. They've taken that formula coming back into the championship in their second returning year, and they've cranked that success up a notch as they're looking to kind of repeat success, and they're doing fantastic right now. They sit currently with 20 points in 4th place on a 6-2-3 record. They're undefeated in the league since their last loss on April 19th against the Miami FC. So we're not the only team that's getting smacked around by them this year. They're on a 4-game win streak, and while you could argue that some of the opponents maybe are not of the highest caliber of quality, like Oakland Roots and Hartford Athletic, they've also, though, kind of gotten through teams like Pittsburgh Riverhounds, which no one can say is an easy team to beat. They've also gotten through Orange County, lower on the table this season than I think OCSC wants to be, but they're doing damage there. And on top of that, they've even found results against teams like the Charleston Battery. And did you know they got a win against FC Tulsa? I was like, yeah, they're supposed to. FC Tulsa's like towards the top of the Western Conference right now. I'm not really paying attention to the West. They're like second or third place in the Western Conference right now.
What?
Yeah. It's up is down, down is up. Here's the crazy stat. This is the one that like people should be kind of like when they're doing their prediction leagues for this week. They've only failed to score in just one match this season across all competitions. We're talking US Open Cup, we're talking Jägermeister Cup, US Open Cup where they played against Charlotte FC, mind you. They have found the back of the net in all of their games with the exception of their match against Western Conference leaders New Mexico United away at Isotope Park. So that there is a very important stat when you think about the fact that, especially under Jackson Lee, and you know I love Jackson Lee, I love him a lot, but not exactly a clean sheet machine at the moment. So that'll be an interesting thing to kind of talk about. And, you know, when you look at the head-to-head record for these two teams, and like, you know, we joked earlier this year about the 0-0 draw being probably the most boring match of all the 0-0 games that we've ever seen. You know, that was a 0-0 that came just 3 months into the beginnings of this club. Remember, North Carolina was just re-promoting themselves back into championship from USL 1. So it wasn't like we were starting to have conversations like, why does this club struggle to find the back of the net consistently? We questioned if the issues lied at the time, and this is so ironic for the just the timing of this pod. We asked ourselves, like, is this because we in our striker system we didn't have JJ Williams yet? This was the second to last game before JJ Williams returned to the squad after nursing that injury through the offseason and the preseason. Feels kind of eerie that we're right back here talking about, do we need a second striker? Do we just need JJ Williams back? And we're playing North Carolina again right now.
Yeah, and then by the next time these two clubs would meet in late July, RIFC kind of had solved the majority of their problems there, and they would beat NCFC, 2-1, thanks in parts to goal from Mark Doyle and an in-form Zachary Harivo. While the game was somewhat dominating affair from the Amber and Blue, it was one of the first times in history, actually it was the first,
yep.
Right, the other one was a little bit later in the season, when RFC would actually secure a come-from-behind victory. Mikey Maldonado opened up the scoring in the 30th minute, and RFC wouldn't respond till late in the game when Mark Doyle and Harivo would score in the 74th and 85th, respectively.
Do you remember when we had those like moments in that summer window where like Isaac King would come on, Zach Harivo would come on,
Bros.
And like if we couldn't do it in the first 15 minutes or the final 15 minutes of the first half, we'd get the game taken care of in the final 15 minutes of the second half. Man, I really wish we had that second half kind of performance in this team right now.
The good old days. Fun fact here for listeners, like I just kind of mentioned here in regards to earning points after trailing, FC Tulsa was another one where we were actually able to grab all 3 points. I remember that one started off a bit rough there too, but they were able to kind of turn that around. That was a little bit later on in the season as well.
Yeah, this is a North Carolina side right now that it's similar, right? So some things can be expected to remain the same. You know, right now they made 8 signings in the offseason, most of which were just depth to the squad. Most of their starters returning. Some of their starters from last year are not getting regular starting minutes now, so it's kind of interesting to see that. But, you know, like you said, North Carolina currently on a 4-match win streak. They're third in the league and first in the Jägermeister Cup. However, that seems less impressive when you look at who they've bested. The interesting thing is like, you know, Jason, we talked earlier about how Rhode Island FC is supposed to lose to a team like Louisville City, both on paper and just the metrics right now because of the form these two teams are in opposite directions. Is it something to like besmirch a team that's beating the teams you're supposed to beat? Like, can we say right now that North Carolina is the real deal in that sense? Because, oh, you've only beat teams that everyone else can do. Like, show us how you test your mettle against
the mighty RFC.
But seriously, like, is that something to take into account, or is form and momentum more important than anything about the quality of the team they're going to play?
It is definitely something you should consider. If there are teams that are historically weak, and if the schedule favors you in a sense where you get an opportunity to play a lot of those teams, where you can kind of build up yourself a cushion, so to say, you know, maybe from there too, you can even build your confidence to say, you know what, we're not just beating up on these little guys. We actually are a good team. And some of that can give you that opportunity to find your form. Because right when everything is going well, like a lot of times it will continue to go well until maybe you hit some sort of wall. And then to really find out what type of team you are is how do you respond when you hit that wall? So when they come up against, Louisville or something, and if they get just absolutely smacked, 3-0 or something, how do they turn around the next game and fight maybe against like a mid-table opponent, or like a Pittsburgh or something at that point, who is a beatable team, but requires you to be on your best behavior to be able to break down a Bob Lilly side.
Isn't it interesting though that you say all that, but then like our Memphis 901 minute was like we were supposed to beat Memphis, we didn't. We were just not able to close out matches, falling apart, and then we went and took it. We took the business to the best team in the league. Like, isn't that a really interesting, I don't know, deviation to that statement?
I think last year we have to look at differently for us in the sense that we were a brand new collection of players who, have some USL experience, but as a brand new team, people didn't know who we are. We had a bit of luck and fortune on our side that they didn't know what we were doing. Brand new coach. I think you may put a little bit of a caveat on that. Clearly, the fact that we were then able to go to the final and we were able to beat them again shows that it wasn't just some sort of fluke. But I don't think people knew who we were last year. And I think at this point, maybe they have a little bit understanding. At this point, they also think, well, I'm not afraid of this team.
They certainly know who we are at this moment. Getting back to this North Carolina side, we mentioned how good they've been offensively in finding chance creation and finding goals. Defensively, they're not exactly a solid team, which is why I think they may be overperforming in their index a little bit here. In the last match that they had against Orange County, they conceded 23 shots in their 90, and Jake McGuire absolutely kept his team in for all 3 points. I'll bring up their stats defensively here in a minute, but for a team that is under that much pressure, you have to kind of ask yourself, are you the real deal, or are you going to eventually break because this isn't sustainable? And I think the Achilles heel of this North Carolina side right now is in their defensive composition. But getting into the attack for a second, this team is probably the most cross-heavy team in the USL Championship right now. We just talked a minute ago about Louisville, like throwing in so many crosses, but this team makes that look ridiculous. I think they are the leaders, or at least top two in the league right now. In their 3-4-2-1 formation, head coach John Bradford loves to create overloads in the wide areas. So you'll often see even a central player like Maldonado break out to the right and just add an extra body. And this allows one of two things to happen. One, they either set up a passing sequence that bypasses the wingback or the fullback, or two, they just put numbers out there to draw defenders out and then create gaps for like third runners to come in and get closer and have more dangerous looks in the box. But the crosses come from every direction, whether it's in swinging or out swinging. This team thrives off of those triangles with their wide center backs. And the weird thing is that they play with two number 10s. So they have two attacking midfielders, two creative players that are more comfortable being towards the top of the box and not necessarily taking that extra step in, waiting to collect balls at the top of the 18 and kind of see what opportunities exist from there. So lots of movement here. This team also, again, for another reason, I'm not sure they're the real deal. Sustainability, when you have this much player mileage on legs, because they're constantly moving, they're trying to constantly create openings. I don't know if they can make a deep run or if they'll hit a wall at some point midway through the season, and like you'll just see players just gassed because they just really can't kind of keep that momentum going. But it'll be interesting because like this has worked so far. It's gotten them to fourth place and it's allowed them to score in every single game. So we'll see what happens here. Getting into the injuries really quickly, it's the same injuries from last week. Hugo Bacharak, JJ Williams, Marky Barra, Koke Vegas, all still out. There's no injuries reported from North Carolina that we could find, so they are at full strength with their squad right now. Jason, talk us through what you believe is the second coming of the 3-5-2.
Guaranteed to be wrong here. Jackson Lee in net with a back three here of Rio Hope Gund, Aime Mabika, and Grant Stoneman. We'll get a midfield 5 there of Frank Nodarce, Clay Holstad, Amos Shapiro-Thompson, Zach Hervo, and Aldair Sanchez, with Joe Brito and Maxi Rodriguez as our 2 forwards.
I like this a lot. I think we made the joke last week that I just want to see a Maxi Rodriguez stat where it's like every time you leave the opponent's final third, you get fined like $5 and it has to go to some RI charity. I really want to see, I just want to see it once until JJ gets back. I just want to see it one time, because if it could work that well for Detroit, why not? And I know it will not happen, but I think this is the answer. I want to ask you to kind of jump into some of the storylines for this one, as well as kind of what we saw in the Louisville match. Curious, Frank Nodarce had one of the best games offensively in this Louisville match, even though that's not much to say. He had the most looks at goal. I want to ask you, are we losing something by having Frank Nodarce not in a true defensive role? And if we are we gaining more by putting him in this more offensive role? Like, if you had to have defensive Frank or offensive Frank, which one's actually the better complete contributor to the team's performance overall?
I think he's been a little bit shaky at the back, but the fact that he's also naturally a defender, I think, gives you an added benefit in the sense that, you know, his like you said, his offense was there pretty good. He actually made a few good passes after me kind of questioning whether or not he was able to. He made actually a really good low cross against Lou last night. So I think that kind of gives you that extra solidity in the back, where maybe if there are periods of time where you just need to defend, well, now you have an extra defender there to kind of help that out. And, you know, Rio Hope Gund, Ime Mabika, Grant Stoneman have all been pretty solid this year. So I'd be comfortable with like leaving them there at the back, kind of looking back to running back the clock into similar tactics what we saw last year where we found success.
What about the argument then, though, like, and people are in love with this lineup, and us for that matter. What about the argument then, though, Quizera doesn't have a space in the right anymore with Frank Nodarce there, right? He would have to go to the left. Aldair, while he didn't have as loud of a game last week, has been arguably one of the better players this season so far. You know, you put Nodarce in that spot, I guess it can give you depth, it can give you rotation, but also, too, Nodarce's going to burn out. He can't sustain that for 90, but you can get.
Where's Danny Revere at? Is he almost back?
I saw pictures of him.
I mean, not even back, like almost ready to go.
I hope so. I you know, we say that not knowing what he'll actually offer, because again, I feel like he's just another fullback, not necessarily a right wing back. But like, I guess where I'm going with this is Nodarce, then you lose. He's capable of 90 minutes. You know, usually if he gets subbed, it's because of just bad decision making on the night. He's not in his best form for the game. Like, he can go the full 90. There are other players tactically you would want on. You can't really just say, hey, thanks for running, 70 minutes. We're now going to put on another wing back or another winger, drop into this left center back role. Sorry that you're so gassed.
You could sub on like, was it Karifa Yao? And then you could kind of transition to more of some sort of back four, because we've seen Rio Hope Gun have the ability to play right back. He's comfortable on the ball. Maybe you just kind of shift formations a bit where you aren't pushing up as high. And then you could even kind of like push someone else to the side. I mean, some our center backs are comfortable stepping up on the ball into like midfield positions. So he could be almost some sort of like right midfielder as opposed to right wing back, who kind of maybe hovers more around the center line in terms of helping move and cycle the ball, but isn't necessarily getting up there into joining the attack. And I mean, if not, why not give him the opportunity to try it out?
Okay.
I mean, if we have if we have so many center backs, just start do what. Does Lou have any actual midfielders?
Just put Mabika and Frank Nodarce as our striker pair up top and just float balls in. Sanchez is going to get so many assists so fast.
To start pushing players around different positions. I mean, Khano loves Pep anyway. Just everyone is, all of our fullbacks are now midfielders. Just do that. Inverted fullbacks. Let's go.
So then getting into the North Carolina side of things, they, like we said, they play in a 3-4-2-1. Expect goalkeeper Jake McGuire to continue his job in net. And then that back three of Finn Sundstrom, Bryce Washington, and Paco Craig. In the midfield four, you're going to have Rafael Menzingen, Colin Martin, Michael Maldonado, or Mikey, as he likes to go by. I never understood, like a man that's closer to 40 than 15, adding the Y to your name. Like,
that's just maybe a nickname he just took through him with his childhood. Maybe
hey,
it works. It works.
As someone who had a Y at one point on my name, it was like the first thing to get rid of. Jaden Servania going to be in that left midfielder role. Then your front double pivot is going to be Pedro Dolobella, Luis Perez, and then your striker right now, Adam Luckhurst. He's got the luck in him, Jason. Evan Conway relegated to a bench role as of late, so single striker. But this team, like we said, they love their triangle overloads. They love going wide. Interesting, because I think Rhode Island FC, they also like to go wide, so this could be a battle fought on the wings in the margins, which is beneficial to us, because I still don't think we've got that central verticality. I've mentioned it now, I think 3 weeks in a row. We're suffering there, especially as we try to attempt final third entries. They all seem to kind of come from the outside and then kind of invert back in. But this team is the real deal. So talk us through, which player did you pick tonight to kind of showcase?
Yeah, so Olix Anderson here continues to cement his legacy as NCFC's most dangerous attacking threat. After joining in January 2022, he exploded in 2023 with 17 league goals and 6 assists, finishing second in League One's Golden Boot race, and enough to earn a spot on the All-League first team. But not only that, he earned the MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, proving pivotal in leading NCFC to the title. His impact hasn't waned in the championship in 2024. He's shared top score honors with 12 goals and was again leading through October, helping NCFC clinch a playoff berth. Remember, that was kind of a late push from them there. Anderson recently surpassed the franchise scoring record with his playoff qualifying goal on October 26, 2024, a testament to his consistent finishing and late game mentality. What sets Anderson apart? He's an intelligent striker. He wins duels, times his runs well, and delivers both goals and assists. 7 Team of the Week nods and a Player of the Week honor in 2023 underline his regular high-level performances. As North Carolina seeks to build on championship momentum, Anderson remains their main offensive spark and an elite goal getter.
Yeah, so I know Anderson, like, why would you profile him if he's not in the squad? He normally is. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know if he had World Cup responsibilities in this last set of international friendlies with St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So if he did play, expect him. This will be probably kind of like the first game back where he could get some minutes. So it's just questionable at this, but he does offer a much different attacking profile than Luckhurst, and that's just something to kind of consider there. And then, of course, I made fun of him a second ago, but I've got Mikey Maldonado. He's been North Carolina's midfield anchor since he arrived at the squad in 2023, back when they were that USL 1 team. Since then, he's been first team for USL 1. He's been just kind of like one of those top prolific midfielders, not always getting all of the flowers that he probably deserves, but still doing the work. He's like the Marky Barra, but with a little bit more of a sense to be able to go for goal. He's logged 52 tackles alongside an 85.2% pass succession rate, and he's really helped kind of maintain control of that midfield, whether it's the central part of it or, like I said, he likes to go out wide. So far this season, as of mid-2025, he's played in every single match since he joined in January of 2023. So he's got a lot of consistent appearances. And when you have that level of consistency with a high output like what he's got, it just creates that gel, right? It creates that like reliability that, as a coach like Bradford can do, like he can start chopping and changing in other places and go like, I know what I'll always get from Maldonado. And really, when you look at it, what stands out for him, it's just he's a disruptor in both the fact that he is like a more forward playing number 6, in the sense that like he's not afraid to take the tackle. He's not afraid for the challenge. And he's not afraid to fight for possession. They don't really do a high press. They don't play that game, but he's one of the players that, like, if the ball's coming through the middle channel, he wants to disrupt it like a 6, right? Like he wants to make sure that it doesn't go any further in that direction. He's got insanely high dual totals. out of the midfield. And when you look also at the fact that in this season, he now leads the team in goal contributions, primarily around assists, now at 5 assists. That foot of his, it's either going to find the back of the net or it's going to find the feet of one of his teammates, because he has looked exceptionally dangerous this season. We've kind of touched over some of these storylines already from the tactics. We talked about Maxi at the front line. We've talked about 3 losses so far. Chico, do you think he's checked out at this point? Do you think
it's hard to say, because we thought maybe this last time he would have, or maybe I joke, but maybe coach didn't think that this was as the midweek game that is as winnable. So kind of save what you actually want to do for the weekend. It's hard to say. He can be difficult to read at times.
Yeah, I think that at this point, and we talked about this, I don't know how much you want to go into it, but we talked at length getting ready for the show about how I don't know if Chico needs a benching to like get the spark to light the fire inside, so to speak, or if that would cause a hindrance to his form, right? Like if he loses Khano's faith to get him in the game, does that make or break? Because we had to deal with this when he had the yips after Phoenix. We didn't see him for a while, but we also kind of eased our way into like, oh, he had an injury. Whether that was like it needed 3 weeks or we were just going to be precautionary and it was going to be 3 weeks. Then we had JJ and it was like, well, hey, like JJ was the one that trained with this squad. Like JJ, you know, he was one of our first signings. I guess he didn't really train with the squad. He was injured the entire preseason, but JJ is going to be the guy. We're going to try him out for a bit. But like right now, there's no one else. So like if you say, hey, coach, put me in, I'm your only forward, and they go, we hear you, but we're going to try Amos Shapiro-Thompson in the top spot. We're going to see what happens there. What does that do for the confidence for a Cameroonian striker like Chico?
It's hard to say. I mean, you would think that he would also look at it and say, I mean, it depends on like what his personality, her perspective from that, and says, coach is doing this because I'm not doing my job in terms of scoring goals. I need to do better to win coach's favor back because I want to be out there and playing. I want to be the guy scoring goals for this team.
Then what does it say when Noah and Maxi get the bench, but not him? Does it go back to what you said, that maybe he was just saving the quote unquote better players for North Carolina to get all 3 points?
Potentially. It's like I said, it's hard to say with Khano. He's hard to read. But I mean, also maybe he's very strict. Like we know he is flexible in regards to how he views positioning, right? Pushing different people around. But maybe striker's the one position where he's like, no, you have to have a striker out there, and he's not ready to go full pep and just put a midfielder out there and say like, you know, let's just pass it around the box and take shots and see what happens.
North Carolina, we mentioned, have scored in all but one game this year, but in their last 5, they've scored 9 goals. We have scored 10 goals all season.
They've also, you know, not to take anything away from them, they've done really well, but they've relied on 3 90-plus minute goals to help them out here. Like that game against Hartford where they didn't score until the 97th minute.
The 97th minute.
Yeah. So
and Hartford was down a man for 35 minutes.
They do seem to have a bit of luck on their favor. I'm not gonna like sit here and say that they're not in a like the right position, but you know, sometimes things just do go your way. I can't say that about RIFC right now, but
when a team has scored this many, especially from crosses and corners, do you do something different when a team is in this level of form, or do you just play your game to the best of your ability? Because obviously RFC has struggled with set pieces this season with corners. I'm not saying that's where all of the attack will come, but when you're in a 9-goal scoring streak and we now haven't scored a goal in 3 games, and the team scored more goals than us already, but you're only 1 goal off in 5 games. Like, do you focus defensively, or do you just go all out attack and say, score 2 on us, we're going to score 3? We need to prove to fans we can play Psycho Killer 3 times at Centerville Bank Stadium in a row.
They really need that royalty money, don't they? It's hard to say, because also with the week that they have, do they even have a practice session? I think Coach mentioned in the interview we
they
played,
were,
like they
were
won't,
2-,
right?
and then
Because
it's regen. It's
they
regen.
probably had to travel and then regen, and then just play the game. So you probably just have to make some minor tactical tweaks, like, you know, definitely play that 3-5-2 that we put out there, and then, you know, give them instructions and kind of hope for the best, and kind of ask your players to rise up in the challenge.
I missed it in the chat, but Diego mentioned that Anderson did play for St. Vincent, so he should be back now for this match. But good to know. And listen, I think you're spot on. Where it all kind of caps into, though, is this home game momentum. So not only do we need to find the back of the net at Centerville Bank Stadium, not only do we need wins at Centerville Bank Stadium, but Jason, this game here this weekend kicks off a 4 home game stretch, and then we have 6 out of our next 7 played at Centerville Bank Stadium. We talked way earlier in the season about like where does it get easy in the schedule, and because
this should be it.
Well, we keep finding teams right when they're at like the peak of their form, so there's a problem there. But in terms of home field advantage, in terms of like where we can be at our best, this is it. So, you know, we've talked about not panicking, but I think when we get on the backside of the month of June and we enter into July, if we don't have at least out of 7 matches, if we don't have at least, I want to say 12 points, this could be some dark timelines ahead. And again, they're not all easy matches ahead, but I think we need 12 points out of this next 7 games. Do you feel in your heart of heart that this team is capable of 12 points right now?
Are they capable? Yes. Do I have the faith right now that they will? It's hard to say.
So you're not hashtag forever faithful?
I am forever faithful. I'll be there. I'll watch every second of all those games. But I'm not confident in what I've seen from this team so far that they are going to go out there and get it done. I mean, I have absolutely no problem being wrong. I don't mind admitting I'm wrong. I don't care. But I'm just not confident in this team right now that they can get it done. I mean, maybe if you told me, you know, surprise, JJ's been healthy and he's going to start on Saturday, I'm like, okay, maybe there's a chance here. But the fact that it feels like we're all resting our hopes on JJ to come back and save us doesn't look great for the rest of the team here.
Which is why we need to see this potential signing, Loney. We need them faster than later. I'm curious why we didn't land this most recent attempt. I always would love to know those details of like, was it us? Was it them? Was it the deal? Did they come and say like, oh my gosh, it rained 6 out of 7 days. I don't want to do that. So, you know, I'm always interested in those kinds of things. For me to hear that a deal fell through tells me it was a bigger name, right? Because like, you know, no disrespect to Rio Hope Gunn, love the guy, but like he needed that deal could have been club housing and, you know, a pack of gum every week, and he would have taken it just because of the ability to maintain a professional soccer career and then like use that to get back into a higher contract somewhere else, right? Like he was definitely he didn't get to negotiate well on that, I imagine. But this one, right, a player being able to say like this isn't going to work out, or the club recognizing after putting the attempt out there, I'm really interested to see like what is that next move, what's that 3D chess piece. But let's wrap things up here. Let's talk about what Rhode Island FC needs to get the win, or in your case, not lose, because I've never seen you this low on the mood elevator. I will say, like I said, I think North Carolina way above their punchline right now. They, you know, we said this earlier about Loudoun, how we didn't think they were the real deal. I think Loudoun very much is the real deal this season. Now they've earned their standing. But this team, North Carolina, major deficiencies, major competency issues are kind of shown. They definitely can be compromised. They're leaking more goals than they should. You know, if it wasn't for McGuire, like I don't think this team would be nearly as good as they are. So when they're not that good and maybe some luck is on their side, maybe that means that they're easier to beat than we think if Rhode Island FC can come out with a stronger game plan. You know, they have a nose for goal. Mentioned that already, but Rhode Island FC can probably figure that out. because one, we've got history on our side. This is a team that we've clawed back from before. First time that we've ever done it. In fact, it was one of only 2 times, like you mentioned. So like we haven't exactly done that. I think we've only recovered like 10 points from a losing position, and with only 2 of those being wins, the other 4 were draws. So like not great, but I do think this just goes back to what Rhode Island FC does best: score in the first half, score first, and then hold on for dear life. The club right now, I think they're still 14, 15 games unbeaten when they score first, and they're what now, 7 defeated when they don't score first. So like the answer right now, until you can figure something else out tactically, just score first. Find the back of the net, don't care how, and just score first. Easy as that. And then play a complete 90 and hold on that they don't score in the 95th plus, and I think you'll be okay.
Yeah. With the run of home games that we have coming up, I think now would be a real good time for RFC to figure out their home form. And I think you're right. I think when we look at North Carolina, they are better than they are last year. I don't think they're as good as like Loudoun or Charleston or Louisville. But they look like they could be a playoff team again, which they were able to sneak in last year, but maybe a bit more comfortable of a playoff team. RFC has the talent and the quality to beat them. I just don't know if we've had our like Memphis 901 moment yet this season. I don't know if the players have all kind of come together and like rally and say, you know what, like kind of as a collective come together and say, hey, I'm not going to call any names, but we have not been good enough. I just don't know if we've got that. Like maybe this game could be it. If they play to their potential, I think we could easily go out there and get a win. If not, at least get a draw against a team that is better than they were last year. But in the form we are, I just don't. It's hard for me to have confidence in this team until I actually see them do it. Like, go out there and prove me wrong. Show to me that you can win at home. Until then, like I look at this game and I think we could go out there and lose.
Wow.
Have we won at home yet this year?
I mean, so we're at the point where we're predicting losses for Rhode Island, though. Look what Khano has done to my boy. Never thought I'd see.
I mean, who's gonna go out there and score for us?
I don't know, but I've got it as a draw, and someone will. Maybe Isaac Enking will sub on and find the back of the net.
Like I said, I would love to be wrong. Cool. I have no problem admitting I'm wrong. I just haven't seen it yet.
Producer Torin and I will enjoy rubbing in your face when you are wrong, because we both have a draw. It'll be a scoring draw because this team is capable of scoring and then getting scored on.
I mean,
we'll just see if Rhode
there'll
Island
be goals. There'll be goals.
Well, there will be goals in the set. Well, if there's goals and it's not from Rhode Island, it's a 2-0 shutout.
2-1.
Okay, got it.
Or just like some sort of 1-goal deficit.
Perfect, even better. Fans across Pop Mob and SofaScore in the aggregate believe Rhode Island FC will win this game. They are the forever faithful. They're the true heroes. 53% believe that the game will end in a victory for Rhode Island. 14% on the draw, and 33% think North Carolina will squeak this one out. So only 14% of the entire population knows what they're talking about, because this will absolutely be a draw. And draws will continue, Jason, to get predicted until scoring improves. Oh, man. This has been like, I can't keep doing these losses, man. I can't keep
what losing to Lou midweek does to a man.
It's that, and it's
also Miami,
it's 2 midweek losses,
and also Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's when they pile up, because like when we get the wins, we go, oh my gosh, we shot outside the box and scored 3. We're never gonna get beat again, and then
or you just change one of those to a draw, and they're like, okay,
And here's the frustrating thing, to kind of like
stumbling, but
to wind it down.
There.
The other thing that really sucks about that stat is, it is true we have 3 championship season losses in a row, but we have a Jägermeister Cup win in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And so it's like it counts, but it doesn't, but it does, but it doesn't. And like that is the most frustrating part, because it's so quick. Like if you look at the 5-game streak in regular play,
everyone knows that the Jägermeister Cups happen in an alternate universe. Those games are completely separated from the league.
But even if just looking at the last 5 games, we have 2 wins and 3 losses. I mean, like, go back to that the standings, and like Detroit has like 3 draws and 2 losses. Hartford has like 5 losses. Like, it could be worse. I hope it doesn't
Absolutely.
get any worse, because like you said, we need this momentum to start building. Now is the time. But it's hard to do a recap a day after a match and then another recap a day after a match, and they're both losses. It's a bit taxing on the soul. And since we're not paid for this, like, it's makes it hard to get out of bed sometimes. All right, here's your weather report. Rain should be limited to the morning time, as this is a early precipitation coming through, with the kickoff weather probably going to be most likely around 61 and cloudy. So no sunshine just yet. Beautiful weekdays, and
What are
then
those
just terrible
UV rays
weekends.
going to look like? I need to know.
I don't have the UV
the
heat
numbers
spread. I
are
don't have the
to
tide
know-
charts. I don't have
Okay.
the humidity. I don't do any of that. I just do make sure you bring a jacket, or make sure you bring sunscreen, and this is how you're going to feel in the middle of it. And then, so this should be a much drier affair than the last few matches at home. So probably no rainbows. And just remember, gates are opening at 6 p.m. So I've heard they've been pushing back. Didn't get that confirmed. So just saying that a little bit out loud. Heard that from some members that they're maybe going to be pushing those gates back. If that's wrong, check in with the know before you go.
I heard that too, but I would look for some sort of confirmation from the club.
So I'm only saying it more specifically because, again, the club didn't want to talk to me today, is that, if they've pushed it back, don't anticipate showing up. Just check the know before you go to time your own adventure. And then if they say something, I'll finally tweet it out later. But I also don't know if that's true, because this is also going to be 401 night for the club. So the game kickoff is at 7 p.m., but this is where there's going to be the $1 hot dogs, the $2 kids drinks, the $4 adult drinks and beers. So with it being like a ode to Rhode Island with 401, I imagine they're going to be in earlier, but I'm just not quite sure. So since I've been hearing that, I just want to say it out loud. And because you don't want to have like 5 kids with you and then not be able to get in the gates. Like, that's the worst thing in the world. And then, that's it. That's all I got. And I have nothing else to say, because this was a depressing week when it comes to the Rhode Island FC side of things. So feel free to give your score predictions. We'll put them up as we rind things out, and any other comments or love. But otherwise, I imagine that we'll see you in the weekend to come. Jason, what's the final word?
I'm disappointed that they chose to make the beers a flat $4 instead of $4.01. But, we can't have perfect symmetry in the world. So with that, guys, make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all of your New England soccer coverage. And that's your Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky at RIFC Podcast, Instagram at Raising Anchor, and RaisingAnchorPodcast.com is that website. We got anchors up, y'all. See you on Saturday, forever faithful. Rain, shine, lose, win. I'll still be there.
Anchors up.